night on the CINA 102.3 app at CINAFM.com, on TuneIn, on smart speaker, and at 102.3 FM. CINA Radio, every device, everywhere. The following program does not necessarily reflect the opinions of the management, staff, or advertisers of CINA Radio.
Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز المختصة في قضايا حوادث السيارات، مع نخبة من المحامين في اختصاصات عدة منها الطلاق والهجرة والإفلاس، يأتيكم الآن على الهواء مباشرة. أسعد الله أوقاتكم بالخير. أهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز دائما تستقبل قضاياكم المتنوعة والمتعلقة بالبيرسونال انجري، كار اكسيدنتس، قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الإفلاس، قضايا الكريمنال لو، فاميلي لو، وقضايا ضمان اجتماعي وإصابات العمل. دائما الاستشارة مجانية في مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز. 248-557-3645. حلقات برنامج يور رايتس تعاد مرة أخرى، يعاد بثها على الموقع الإلكتروني yourrights.com/radio أو على اليوتيوب. كل ما عليكم هو البحث عن قناة جومانا كيروز. تحياتنا لكم، أهلا وسهلا فيكم وأهلا وسهلا بك جومانا.
صباح الخير رامي، صباح الخير لكل المستمعين. ومنردد أنه حلقة الهجرة دايما من عيدها نهار الأحد الساعة 7 بالليل.
تمام، بالفعل على راديو سينا. فاللي أكيد قضايا الهجرة مهمة لمستمعينا، فالاستماع لها أيضا يعني شيء مفيد. وكل يوم أحد في تمام 7 مساء. واليوم موضوع جديد.
اليوم موضوع جديد ما حكينا عنه كتير مع المحامي مايكل روث، اللي هو صار بدير الديبارتمنت اللي هو من آخر الديبارتمنتس اللي فتحناه في مكتبنا، اللي هو الديبارتمنت تبع السوشيال سيكوريتي ديسابيليتي، واللي هو تبع الوركمنز كومبنسيشن. ما تسألني ليش أغلبية المحاميين اللي بيعملوا الضمان الاجتماعي بيعملوا كمان إصابات ضمن العمل، واللي بيعملوا الإصابات ضمن العمل بيعملوا الضمان الاجتماعي. يمكن هلأ بنسأله المحامي مايكل روث، عنده أكثر من 35 سنة خبرة. Attorney Michael Roth, remind us please, how many years of experience do you have?
I've been practicing since 1988, so that would be 31 years.
31 years. I had said 35 years, my apologies. 31 years representing injured people, car accidents as well, by the way, but what you are doing in our office, in our very busy practice, is representing Social Security disability claimants and people injured in work-related accidents, whether car accidents or other injuries.
Yes.
Okay.
And SSI, let's not forget that.
Right. So I always say, like Social Security disability, I mean by that SSI, I also mean by that SSD, correct?
Yes.
So I see that you are extremely busy in the office, and I know that you are getting a lot of calls and you are meeting with a lot of clients. Before we start talking about work-related injuries today, إصابات ضمن العمل, can you give me a brief idea about the flavor of the calls that we are getting in our office, whether it be in SSI or SSD or workman's compensation?
Sure. With the supplemental security income calls, the SSI calls, I'm always being surprised because the person first calls and they don't realize several times already they've actually had insured status, that they
what
had.
Does that mean?
It means that they were actually contributing enough money into the Social Security Administration
that they can apply to SSD.
That's right. They would receive higher benefits. They would receive Medicare eligibility, and any dependents that are in the home would receive a lesser amount, but that amount isn't taken out of the beneficiary's check. It's an additional amount to what the beneficiary gets.
And that is exactly why everyone dreams of having SSD, not SSI, because the payments are higher and because other relatives in the family, if you do get SSD, will get extra income, not taken out of the main person who's receiving
the wage earner.
SSD.
That's right.
And you get Medicare.
That's right.
Okay. So you're discovering that a number of callers think that they are only eligible to SSI.
Right.
But after meeting with them and going over their work history, you're finding out that they are eligible for SSD.
This is correct.
Why is it that people are being misled? Why is that?
The language barrier remains the biggest barrier that I'm observing. And also what we're seeing is a more aggressive administration, a Social Security administration that's treating itself like an insurance company more than a human services agency.
So when they're going to the Social Security Administration, they're feeling I'm not going to say animosity, but they're feeling a little bit adversarial instead of feeling like they are going to a branch of the government that is there to help them.
Correct.
So they're finding themselves more in an adversarial relationship when they are going to the Social Security Administration's office, and less like, this is a branch of the government that's here to help disabled people.
There's a tension to it. And if they haven't been in the country long enough, or they've only obtained their citizenship through naturalization, there's a tension or a belief that I might not actually be deserving as other people, and they absolutely are. In fact, even without citizenship, you can still receive your Social Security disability, and a lot of people just don't know that.
If you are a green card holder, you may be eligible for SSI.
Yes.
You do not need to be a citizen to get SSI.
No, in fact, let me expand this, because if you've been in another country and a citizen of another country, and that country had its own Social Security system,
such as Canada
and many other countries as well, if you've made contributions there, sometimes the United States will recognize those contributions, and they will treat them as your own,
as credits.
That's right.
Oh,
as
my
own
goodness.
quarterly credits.
I have never heard of that before. So if I understand you correctly, you are stating that the United States will sometimes look at your work history in a country in which you've lived, such as Canada, such as France, let's say, because we know how these two countries, I know how France works, my family lives there. So they may take into consideration your work history there to make a determination here in the United States.
That's right.
As to whether or not you have the credits that you need to be eligible for SSD.
They will hold those credits as eligible towards your own disability or retirement benefits here in the United States.
We may have, we have not been on the radio as often as I would like, because there is so much to talk about and not enough time. So let's take a few minutes and remind our listeners of what is SSI and what is SSD. And if you may allow me to put it in plain language, and feel free to correct me or to add. In order to apply for SSI, you have to have a certain injury. And because of that injury, you are not employable. And you have an income that's below, it's at the poverty level. So if you are, say, someone whose family makes $25,000 a year, you're injured. And let's say you are a mom, and because of the injuries that you have, you're not employable. You can apply for SSI. It is a disability. They're going to give you SSI because of your severe back problem or severe emotional distress or whatever the case may be. You are in essence saying, my income is very low. I need the government to help me, and I have a disability, so I cannot improve my financial situation. I ask the federal government through the Social Security Administration to give me Medicaid because I am not able to afford health insurance, and to give me a monthly payment in the form of SSI. SSD is also where someone is saying, I am injured and I have contributed. I have been someone who has paid her or his dues with the American with American society. I have worked. I have contributed to Social Security. I have contributed to unemployment. I've contributed to Medicare. I've contributed to Medicaid. I've paid. My employer has paid my FICAs on me for years and years and years. And now I'm injured. And because I'm injured, I need help. Now, if I've really worked long enough in this country, they're also going to give me a check, only they're going to call it SSD, and it's going to be higher in money, in sum, than the SSI. And with it will come Medicare, and with it also will come payments to my family
That's
members.
right.
And they're not going to take it out of my share.
That's correct.
It's in addition to, it's extra.
Right.
And that is exactly why everyone would love who has a disability to get SSD, not SSI, because the amount you get from the Social Security Administration is higher.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. But people shouldn't, not approach the government for their supplemental security income benefits as well, because there are plenty of programs in which they offer the disabled person the opportunity to add to what the supplemental security income is giving them. They can find jobs, and the government wants you to be out there going back to work, gaining your skills. So there's actually the opportunity to earn additional money in addition to the benefits you're receiving. And even if the disability goes away, even if you get better and you're no longer under that disability, your supplemental security income will continue for a while until you can be totally on your feet.
So if I heard you correctly, I heard that even if you receive SSI payments from the government, you can still find a job and bring in additional income.
That's correct.
Obviously, you cannot make $5,000.
Well, not a week or not a month, but
Okay.
yes.
But you can supplement your SSI payments by getting a job.
Sometimes it's the best way to maintain your supplemental security income is to be going out and engaging in those work programs. Excuse me.
And as long as what you are doing does not contradict the spirit of why you got SSI in the first place. If you claim that you cannot do manual work because your back is hurting you, you cannot go out and find manual job. You may find a sit-down job. You may find a receptionist job where your back is not compromised, because that's logical. That's okay. So the first thing I heard you say is, even if you get SSI income from the Social Security Administration, you can still find a job and make money on the side, and with the knowledge of the Social Security Administration,
You'd
and
have
with
to
their permission. You have to report it.
That's right.
You have to report it. You've also said that even if the disability, the reason why the Social Security Administration gave you SSI, even if that improves and you are not as hurt, you're getting better, they will still help you get back on your feet. It will take a minute before they will cut off your SSI payments.
They will extend payments for someone who's working and endeavoring to be independent again.
You stated that one of the a number of the calls that you are receiving in the office is indicating to you that a number of people do not know that they are eligible for SSD instead. The larger dollar amount of SSD, the better benefits of SSD than SSI.
Correct.
Okay.
Or that their children are also eligible for child insurance benefits, even though the child is now past the age of 18 or even past the age of 25. If your child became developmentally disabled...
May I
please.
interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
If you get SSD,
Yes.
is it automatic that your children will also get assistance because of your SSD?
Providing that they're dependent, namely...
So under 18?
Under 18 is one way.
Okay.
Another way is if they are developmentally disabled, or let's just say disabled, before the age of 22. If they were disabled before the age of 22, they would be able to continue to receive child insurance benefits throughout their life.
But going back to the typical scenario, dad is getting SSD.
Yes.
His children are under 18. His children will also get additional income because of dad's SSD. True or false?
True.
Okay.
True. In fact, there are some...
But that's not the case with SSI.
No, it's not the case with SSI.
SSI is only one person. One person gets SSI, not the person's children, even if they are minors and dependent. But when the person gets SSD and that person has minors or dependents, the person's minors or dependents also get payments.
But children still have an impact in SSI.
Okay.
And that is because your income is not based on just how much you're making. The income is based on the household income. So if you have several people in the household and you're the only wage earner and it comes out to be below the poverty line set by the United States, then you will become eligible. Now, on the other hand, if you were the only person in that house and you had the same income, you may not become eligible. You may not meet that poverty threshold that makes other families eligible.
Okay. Again, I said that before, and I will say it again. It seems to me like there is not a lot of information out there for people to educate themselves about their rights when it comes to SSI, SSD, and so forth. Even when I went in preparation, not this time, but last time, for our shows, and I went to the Social Security Administration's office, the information is written very broadly. Yes, it's written in simple form, but there is not enough there. The information that's put even on the federal websites, the Social Security Administration's website, and other websites, it just gives you a general idea, but it's not detailed. It's extremely surface. In other words, you read it and you don't know what to do. You read it and it kind of gives you a broad idea, but not enough to know, oh, this is the direction I need to take. This is what I need to apply for. This is what my children are eligible for. Is it because, Michael Roth, is it because the Social Security Administration workers are doing a good job educating people when they're going down to meet with them?
It's really several things. And you have to understand that when you're a worker for the agency, the Social Security Agency, you're using what's called a policy operations manual. And that's going to have very unique, detailed criteria for them to make the determination. The government couldn't possibly put that amount of information on a website. Another thing that I'm finding, especially
But Michael,
yes.
There is no information on the website.
Well, I know that.
It's very confusing.
Well, I was going to say that since you've given me the opportunity to really expand the practice into supplemental security income, a place where a lot of other attorneys really won't necessarily go or explore, when people come in, I have the opportunity to speak to them, sometimes or enough times with a translator, but it's still, good in obtaining information. I find that there are nuances and almost like almost any other case, depending on who the client is and depending on who their dependents are or the nature of their disability, you can find the unique situations that basically make them eligible, but only if you get to talk to them and only if they get to, tell you what their unique circumstances are. It isn't just a rubber stamp anymore for me where someone asks and I can say yes or no. I have to know many details and I have to think like the agency thinks in order to make them qualify for benefits.
So let me ask you again. Are the Social Security Administration workers, representatives?
Yes.
Are they good with giving information? I mean, they cannot give legal advice.
They're not going to be instructors. They're not going to tell the applicant, the beneficiary, what they need to do next to be qualified. They're not going to be an advocate. What they're going to do is they're simply going to go down the list of criteria and find out if they're eligible or not. And I'm unfortunately beginning to become accustomed to a mentality, a corporate mentality in which some people can impress supervisors or others by not necessarily awarding benefits each and every time or being a little bit more demanding, or being exercising more discretion as to awarding benefits or finding someone qualified when they might be able to find them not qualified. And I think this might be involved in what goes into consideration for promotions within the agency. Mm-hmm. It has that much more of a feel to it now, more competitive, and that denying people are just as important as not. And that really wasn't necessarily the case 10, 15 years ago.
More people are getting denied today who would otherwise have been approved in years past.
Certainly at the administrative hearing level, yes. Certainly, it's probably and they rate
when you
each
say
judge.
administrative hearing level, meaning when the person has already been denied and is appealing, and in all likelihood hired the lawyer by then, and you are in front of a judge.
That's right.
Okay.
And in that case, your best odds are at 40%, and they rate each judge to see how many they're actually granting. Some judges can be up to 54%, but usually it's less than 50% that get awarded. But that's going to be your best opportunity in front of the administrative law judge if you haven't received your benefits at the application level.
I'm pulling out my folder again that I pulled out last time.
Yes.
And I am looking again, and I'm looking at all these pamphlets that I printed out from the Social Security Administration's website, the socialsecurity.gov. And this one says Social Security disability question. This one is a question that you just talked about when you said that you can get SSI and still work.
Right.
And this pamphlet is about how work can affect your benefits. This one is, you just mentioned it, and you said that, children with disabilities and what kind of benefits they can get. And this one reads what you need to know when you get your Social Security benefits. And this one says how you get SSI. And this one is your payments while you're outside the United States. And this one is, I like this one. This one is how you earn credits. Because a lot of people talk about, to get SSD, you have to have the requisite work credits. But no one understands how many credits, because all we know is if you've worked long enough, not under the table, not getting cash, but as an employee, and you have contributed to the system in FICA, meaning in federal and state, you've contributed because you've worked in Medicare and Medicaid and unemployment and so forth, then if you've worked long enough in the United States and contributed enough, then you will get the higher paying SSD check than the SSI. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about credits.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, it's one of those pamphlets that was extremely helpful. Extremely helpful. I like that a lot. So they said in 2019, if you earn this year, for every $1,360 you earn, you accumulate 1 credit. So every $1,360 you earn, you accumulate 1 credit, but we can only count 4 credits a year.
That's right.
So you can make, as a surgeon, $3 million a year. They're only going to count 4 credits a year.
That's right. You're not going to be able to roll them over or bank them. So if you had a very good year one year, it's really not going to, be considered for the next year. That's correct.
Okay. And here I'm scrolling through this, and trust me, I know a little bit more than some people and a lot less than other people, yourself included. So I am learning this much like I'm learning bankruptcy law and I am learning immigration law. It also says here, in order for you to get SSD, I like this box. It makes it very simple, and I hope it's accurate and complete. They say, if you get disabled between age 31 and 42, if you've already gotten 20 credits, you're going to get SSD.
Right.
If you get disabled at age 44, you need 22 credits, which is about 5.5 years approximate. If you get disabled at age 50, to get SSD, you need 28 credits. And we saw that the credit's about 1,300. I know it changes every year. It goes a little bit up for the inflation, but it's kind of in the 1,000. For example, to get SSD and you are 60 years old, you need to have accumulated 38 credits. And remember, you cannot get more than 4 credits a year. So that's at least 9.5 years.
Right.
So I don't know. Take a look at this. I like that box. I like it because now I know when they say that I earn enough credits, now I know how many dollar amounts I have to work out there to accumulate the credit. Now I know that I can make $30 million a year. The maximum I can accumulate to get SSD is 4 credits a year. And now I know, depending on my age, how many credits I need to have accumulated to get SSD. Right. I like that a lot.
And it's going to make sense that as the younger you are, once you become disabled, you're not going to have those credits. In other words, if I become disabled in my 20s or my 30s, I'm certainly not going to have the number of credits that someone in their 40s or 50s have accumulated. And that's why it's going to be so much lower for them than it is for someone who's finally looking or experiencing disability at the age of 56.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean, let me make sure I understand,
Sure.
if I may see this again, because I want to refer to it for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So are you telling me I am, for example, age 55? So it says here age 54 and says 56, and it's 33 credits, because they say if you're 54, you need 32 credits. If you're 56, you need 34 credits.
Yeah, but not for that year, for your entire
not for
lifetime.
that year.
Right.
You should have accumulated so far.
That's right.
So you need less credits to get SSD when you are younger.
Yeah, because you've had less time to work.
So they're not going to punish you that you haven't accumulated. The law doesn't require you to have all these credits when you just started. So that's why they say between the ages of 31 and 42, to get SSD, all you need is 20 credits. So if the credit is, let's say, the credit is 1,200 on average. I know this year is 1,300, but let's say 20 multiplied by 1,200. You need to have only worked for $24,000.
Yes.
That's it.
That's
in order
it.
for you to get SSD.
And remember how we were talking about work incentive for SSI?
Yes.
For the younger people who are going to be eligible for SSD, there's actually wiggle room because they're so young for them to go out and experiment with what they may be able to do under the SSD program for young people. It's not necessarily so as you approach older age, but for the younger folks, again, they want them going out and hopefully finding something they can do within their disability or handicap.
Mm-hmm. This talks about survivor benefits.
Yes.
When a person has worked so many years and paid their social security taxes and they die. So apparently some members of that family is eligible for what's called survival benefits. And I'm just reading here.
Yes.
It says up to 10 years of work is required for you to be eligible for benefits. So the widow of someone who worked 5 years is not going to get survivor benefits. But if the person who died has worked for more than 10 years, then there will be survivor loss benefits. And
not only just for the widow and not only for their own natural biological children, for stepchildren and for grandchildren and even for step-grandchildren, they will be eligible for some forms of survivor benefits.
Okay. Very, very, very... What's the advantage of Medicare over Medicaid? When you get SSD, you get Medicare. When you are on SSI, you get Medicaid. When you move, can you move from SSI to SSD? Can you transfer?
I'm thinking about that. You're not going to get both. And so what we're saying when we transfer from SSI to SSD, we're saying the person went from not having sufficient credits or income to all of a sudden having sufficient. And I wouldn't know how they do that in the period of disability. But a person can be eligible both for Medicare and Medicaid. I know that does happen. And I'd love to address your question. There's actually more programs and more treatment that you can get under Medicaid than you can under Medicare. But
what are these treatments? You don't have them available to you right now. That's okay.
I wish I could tell you, but I will tell you that it's more oriented towards younger people.
Okay.
And the reason that is if they're on Medicaid and they have availability or access to physicians and other forms of therapy, it's a better chance that if you take care of it early, the person won't continue to be disabled or continue to deteriorate in their health, which is why Medicaid makes all of those services available. Now, Medicare will pay the physicians, the treaters, more money than Medicaid does.
That's why some doctors do not take Medicaid.
That's right.
So that limits the pool of good doctors for someone who needs medical treatment.
I've never been able to discern between good doctors that take Medicaid and necessarily not good doctors that take Medicaid. Some exquisite doctors, some exquisite neurosurgeons take Medicaid.
And some exquisite doctors do not take Medicaid.
Oh, that's true. That's
Yes.
true.
When you said, we started this discussion by me asking you, what's the flavor of people who are calling our office? And you said you are surprised that some people think they're only eligible for SSI, whereas you come to find that they really have the credits needed to apply and obtain SSD.
That's right.
How do you go about making sure that somebody's work credit or employment history records are accurate? What do you ask the client to get you?
There's always a point in the interview where I need to know where they worked, what their job skill was, how much they were making. And that's true whether they're applying for the SSD or SSI.
Okay.
And then what happens is in the course of the interview, they start identifying or describing a work history that's been full for 10 years.
Okay.
Or
and
more.
you need to obtain at some point, maybe not on the day of the interview because you take them at their word, but you need to at some point obtain their W-2 records from their employers, right?
Yes. Or Social Security, if you've been contributing and if your employer has been taking those contributions and
doing and following the law.
Right.
So Social Security has a copy of your
entire work history.
Your entire work history.
You
Social Security has that.
I can find things.
Do you often?
I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt. Can you reach out to the Social Security Administration and say, I want the work history on my client?
When if you just want a work history without making an application, there's a fee for that. And they will send you a certified copy, which I will do every once in a while in workers' compensation. But if you're applying for benefits, that should be available at no charge. Because they have to make the determination whether or not you have adequate earning credits.
Mm-hmm. I'm also reading from another pamphlet that says that today, in 2019, SSI payment in general, on average, is $771 for one person, $1,157 for a couple. That's on average. They also say not everyone gets the same amount. And let's remember one thing we said before. You may get more or you may get less depending on what state you live in.
That's right.
Some states pay you more than the federal guideline or the federal requirement. And some state may give you less.
Some states
So when you move from one state to the other, you want to find out about your new state's Social Security payment. You may be surprised to discover that you're going to get less money.
Mm-hmm. That does happen.
Mm-hmm. If you live in a state, they say, that adds money to the federal SSI payment, then you may get more. You may receive less if you or your family has other income. Where and with whom you live also makes a difference in the amount. Where, we just talked, one state doesn't change by city, it changes by state.
Yes.
With whom, that's how many people live with you in the house.
That's right.
So they look at how much, not just the one person. They can't look at dad. They have to look at dad in the context of if mom is working, if son is working, if the other son is working, if they all live in the same household.
The income of the household. That's right.
The income of the household. And you stated that you can be a green card holder. You don't have to be. You have to be a U.S. resident. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen.
Right.
To apply and get SSI.
That's correct.
Okay.
Some states have actually just handed the SSI program back to the federal government. They say, we're not even going to administer it.
So
and it's handled by the federal
Okay.
government, even though they are obligated to handle the Medicaid dollars themselves.
Mm-hmm. They also talk about what you can own if you are on SSI.
Right.
And they say that one person cannot have anything that's worth more than $2,000 for a married couple who is living together, obviously, not more than $3,000.
But they can't have a vehicle.
But they can.
Yes.
And they can have a home.
Yes.
So you can be on SSI and own a home. And yes, you can be on SSI and own a car, but only one car.
Yes.
The second car becomes into this $2,000 or $3,000. So yes, you can own a house and be on SSI. And yes, you can own a car, but just one car and be on SSI.
Yes, that's correct. Although when you're talking about the $2,000, $3,000 limit, we're talking about that as a cash asset. And that's
what about bank accounts, stocks, and bonds?
Well, that's right.
Yeah,
I think
that's all cash.
All cash.
It can be cash, yeah.
So.
Okay. Do you know about something called SNAP?
Yes.
Can you tell us what SNAP? SNAP stands for
the Supplemental Nutrition
Assistance Program.
Thank you.
What is that about?
Well, that formerly used to be called.
Is that one of those benefits that you were just praising?
Well, we didn't speak about SNAP in particular. SNAP is what used to be known as food stamps.
Formerly known as food stamps.
Yes.
Okay.
And
now I can tell you what that is, but go ahead and tell me.
No, sure.
No, you tell me.
Okay, well, if you fall within a certain income level that's identified by the government, you become eligible for subsidies in purchasing your food. And sometimes you can get great opportunities, even at the farmers markets. They will take and they're not actual tickets anymore either. People use a bridge card. Which is like a credit card. It's like
and there is money on it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about bridge card fraud in a minute.
Okay. Well,
misusing a bridge card.
But there was so much more fraud with the stamp because once you could sell the stamp and the holder of the stamp, could now go into a store that, was accepting them and buy what they wanted, even though they had an income level where they would have never qualified for that program.
So Medicaid. When you are on SSI, you get Medicaid, and in all likelihood, you get SNAP, formerly known as food stamps.
You would qualify.
Huh?
You would qualify for SNAP.
So whereas Medicaid helps you pay your doctor and hospital bills, SNAP helps you pay for food.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you have to apply? Is there like a written application for SNAP benefits?
Yes.
Okay.
And anyone who's applying for SSI is probably going to have the opportunity to make themselves eligible for the SNAP as well.
When we talk about sometimes bridge card or food stamp fraud, are we talking about misusing? The government gives us SNAP to buy food, not to purchase and sell liquor.
No.
Okay. And the government gives us food stamps to buy food.
Right.
So when we hear about food stamp fraud or bridge cards fraud, give us a scenario or two how people are misusing these government benefits that are there to help them eat and survive and have a roof over their head and a doctor to see them, and they're using it for other things.
Usually, especially with the bridge card, you're going to have a conspirator,
someone along with you,
right, at the other end of the equation.
So you go to a liquor store and you use your bridge card to buy liquor, and the person is willing to sell you liquor.
Yes, but I'm sure it's not going to be a direct exchange. It's probably going to be like, I'll give you cash and write this as a purchase that's legitimate under bridge card, and then you can give me the cash and I will sell you the liquor. No one is ever going to allow the transaction directly that the bridge card was used to buy liquor. I mean, nobody would do that because they get found out immediately.
Right. So they're going to put a step in between the
That's
steps. Right. Okay, to hide it.
Or maybe somebody else, a third party, not a member, not a person who's by the cash register, will simply give them cash in exchange for purchasing something with the bridge card, and that cash will be used to purchase alcohol or an ineligible item.
So, I'm listening to you and I'm learning, and I will tell you that what's sticking in my head is that if I suspect that I am a candidate, qualify for SSI or SSD, I think I'm going to have to go talk to a lawyer because, again, it's much too complicated to know on my own. There is not enough information out there, and I don't think, whereas you find a lot of lawyers who will educate people about car accidents. When was the last time you saw a commercial on television that's educating people about their Social Security benefits rights?
May I?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
With the folks that I'm sitting down with, even when, their English skills might be better than other clients I'm sitting down with, I'm finding that to finish the application, and I'm a lawyer with 31 years experience, it's probably going to take me 4 hours to really perfect an application that I want approved. So the idea that any beneficiary, and I'm not saying it's not possible, family members could help them.
I understand. Everything is possible.
Right. But sitting down and having the beneficiary, the person who wants benefits, finish this application, if they can finish the application, they're probably not qualified for benefits. That's what I've seen. That's the way I feel. If you're really going to organize all the information they want and all the information they need the way they want it, you're going to be basically shooting, yourself in the foot, because that indicates that you have great organizational skills. Although, again, I don't want to disparage people who have, let's say, a mental illness in which if there's no pressure on them, they do great.
Right.
If you give them 3 or 4 days to just do this task, they might do it beautifully. But you take the same person, you put them in a work environment where there's just 2 or 3 more requests and they totally decompensate. So, they may be able to do the application, but I'm finding it not, challenging to do it the way that will get the benefits versus just doing it.
And I also want to add, from my limited experience in dealing with Social Security attorneys, from what I have heard, from what I have gathered, I find that Social Security attorneys on the whole, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I do not want to be unfair. After all, that's not what I personally practice. I find that they're not big on explaining to people, where they are and where they're heading and how is it looking. And I find that most people as attorneys get called on after the beneficiary applies herself or himself for SSI or SSD and gets denied. And I find that at that point, they hire a lawyer, but let me add, and the lawyer spends very little time with them, but says to them, okay, I'm going to appeal for you. And then the lawyer disappears for about a year and a half. The time comes for appearing in front of administrative law judge. The lawyer rushes to update the medical records, see if there is any change between the day the lawyer signed up the client and the day of the appeal. And I find that the client remains very uneducated and uninformed about what's going on, how good this is looking, why were they denied, how can they improve, what are they eligible for,
right,
and so forth. By comparison, you'll find in auto accidents, I have clients who come and from day one tell me what their rights are before I even tell them what they're entitled to. So you find that out there, lawyers on the whole, whether through their commercials or infomercials or whatever commercials, they educate people about car accidents so that a lot more of the population is educated about car accidents than they are educated about Social Security benefits. Although if you think about it, many more people, I would think, are eligible for SSI or SSD than people who get injured in a car accident.
I would agree with that. If the word was out as to what is involved in qualifying as a beneficiary or qualifying as an applicant for SSI, I think a lot more people would apply and a lot more applications would be approved. A lot of attorneys will spend a lot of time looking for what's called a listed impairment. And that's an impairment where if you can just meet the required conditions, boom, you're eligible, and that's the end of it. But that's not the end of it, because you have to deal with disabilities in which the person might not be able to transfer their skills to another type of job. The person might not have the educational level required to do the next job. In other words, I'm talking about the vocational analysis of the application. And a lot of attorneys aren't trained in that area to make sure that what the expert says, the vocational expert says, is not valid. And they don't spend enough time with that.
Right. It's a question of time.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And you know how you mentioned a few minutes ago that if you are getting SSI and you improve and you're trying to get back to work, that the Social Security Administration, the federal government, will give you a little bit of a crutch and keep giving you Social Security benefits. They say here, we will continue to send you payments. If you get payments because you're disabled and you feel that you're improving and you want to go back to work, they will continue to send you payments for up to 9 months.
That's right.
When you go back to work. They say that this 9-month trial period is to give you a chance to test whether or not you are indeed able to work without, having to worry about your payment stopping. So it's like a trial period. And then after 9 months, if you continue working, then they will pay another 3 more months. And if you're not able to continue working, then they will continue your disability. That's a beautiful law. So if you are disabled, you're getting better, you want to go back full time, we're not going to stop your SSI payments. We'll give you a 9-month trial period to see if you're really able to work. If you're able to work, this way you try it out without having to worry about what if I can't, what if my payments stop, how am I going to live?
Right.
Then you continue working, good, we'll give you another 3 months, so that's a whole year. And if you test it out, and during that 9 months, you see that you're not able to return to work, your Social Security payments continue. What about in the event of if someone gets married, or if someone, say, receiving benefits based on their earnings, get married? Now the Social Security Administration has to consider the household income.
We're talking about SSI.
SSI.
Yes.
So let's say before I got married, I was receiving SSI, but now I get married. Then first of all, do I have a duty to notify the Social Security Administration?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Changes in household income have to be reported.
Okay. And sometimes, depending on who I marry and his earning income, I may lose my Social Security, my SSI.
Or hers, yes.
Or hers. So SSI is always looked at within the context of the entire family.
Or household.
It's never, or household, thank you, the household. It's never an individual. An individual alone, if she or he lives alone, that's one thing. Or if she or he lives with people who do not produce income, then there is no change. However, when the income in the family or in the household changes, increases, decreases, that may affect the beneficiary of the SSI.
Providing they're not a minor. Okay? If they're a minor, they're going to continue.
A minor receiving SSI.
It's going to continue receiving, if a minor is disabled, okay, they're going to receive the SSI independent of what the household income is until they reach adulthood.
And then at adulthood, they're going to be, they're going to submit to another health examination to see if they are still.
If they continue to be disabled.
If they continue to be disabled, but they're no longer minors.
That's right.
Okay. What happens if one of the persons or a couple divorces? Or that also, if you're getting payments, then divorce will not affect your No,
No.
it does not.
It's
It's
just
not adding money. If anything,
That's right. It's just-
if anything, it's making things harder and tighter.
Right.
Okay. What about if? Well, that's a little bit unusual. If you adopt a child, that's a little bit of an unusual situation. I don't think that. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying on supplemental security income on the needs-based program, yeah, it would be unusual, and you really wouldn't have the means to do that. On the other hand, there are adopted children under the Social Security disability that will receive survivor benefits even if the adoption takes place, even after the wage earner dies. Okay, if it was in the process of happening while the wage earner was alive, that child will be eligible after its adoption, even though the wage earner is now deceased.
And if a person who is getting Social Security benefits, SSI, dies, then the Social Security Administration does not pay benefits for the month of the death. If they die in June, they should not pay. And in fact, if you get a June payment, you must return it.
Yes.
Now, maybe survivor benefits will kick in for the spouse, but the person who gets SSI, the SSI payments stop when they die.
It's almost retroactive. If they died in June, in the middle of June, they shouldn't be getting a check for any of June. That's the way it works, right?
Because they always pay in advance.
Well, they actually pay the month after your eligibility, and it's the same thing with retirement as well.
So then a payment in June is for May.
That would be correct. In fact, if you apply for your retirement starts the month after you reach retirement age. So if I'm going for early retirement, which is in 62, I have to be totally 62 and a full month before my retirement benefits start. And it's like that with disability, and it's like that with the supplemental security income as well.
Can we in under 3 minutes talk about is a scenario that happens often? People get their SSI and they leave overseas. Do they have a duty to notify the Social Security Administration?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, if they're overseas, I don't know how. Yeah, if they're overseas and receiving SSI, they'd have a duty to report, and I don't think that their benefits would last very long unless they came back.
Yes, that is very true, and I think that there is a lot to say about, when you leave and how long and what you need to do and how to report and what things to report, what happens to electronic payments and so forth.
Right.
Maybe that's something we can talk about next week again.
Right. And I want to also note there's lots of people receiving their Social Security retirement or their Social Security disability insurance benefits who do live outside of the country, and nothing stops that. It's a completely different program in regards to who's living, within the United States and who's not. But as far as supplemental security income, I don't think there's an allowance for folks who are going to move overseas or out of the country.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're very, very short. We have about 2 minutes remaining. Maybe next week we can talk in greater detail about, again, a scenario that happens often. What happens to your payments while you are outside the United States?
Yes.
And there is a whole pamphlet from the Social Security .government website about that. We started wanting to talk about, and I warned you that sometimes we decide, and we couldn't take calls today. We decide to head in one direction and we ended up in another direction. I will just tell you that we started wanting to talk about workman's compensation. We ended up talking about everything but workman's compensation, with the exception of work credit and what is a credit and how many dollars is a credit and how many credits you need to apply for SSD and so forth, which is vaguely related to. It can be the result. SSD can be the result of a work-related injury, but not.
It's related. Believe me, the two are very related, and it's appropriate.
But just to clarify, to get SSD, your disability can be anything. It doesn't have to be arising out of a work-related injury.
That's correct.
But if you are injured in a work-related injury and you have all these credits that you can get the higher earning SSD, then you want SSD. Everybody wants SSD.
Yes.
Because SSD pays more,
Yes.
and because SSD gets your dependence money as well.
And it also has Medicare
And
attached to
does
it.
Medicare also extend to the dependents of the beneficiary or no?
No, to the
Okay.
best of my knowledge, it doesn't.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's going to take a lot of shows to start getting a handle, at least for me, on SSI, SSD, workman's compensation. We're going to be all over the place, and hopefully discussing this enough times, we're going to start getting a handle and hopefully educating people about it.
And I don't want to have the last word here, but
Please have the last
no.
word, no problem.
It is so dependent on the unique individual, and every human being is unique, but really the application process really requires an evaluation of the entire person and not simply what you know about Social Security and whether or not you think they qualify or not. Because
Indeed.
once they're in your office and they tell you parts of their life and an episode here and an episode there, it really just opens up a window or even a door as to what you can do for them with these benefits.
Thank you very much, Attorney Michael Roth. We really appreciate the information you shared and your 31-year knowledge. And God willing, we will be on the air again discussing, who knows, workman's comp, SSI, SD, who knows, next Tuesday. Thank you very
Fantastic.
much.
Thank you.
Very